The grand hall of Valoria's royal palace glittered under the light of floating crystalline orbs, casting soft rainbows across the polished floor. Alien nobles in flowing robes of deep blues and purples mingled, their elongated limbs and delicate features accentuated by the shimmering patterns on their clothing. The air smelled faintly of exotic flowers, and the quiet hum of technology blended seamlessly with the palace's ancient stone architecture. At the center of it all stood Princess Leora, radiant in a gown that shimmered like liquid silver, her eyes bright with amusement as she watched her husband, Kale, stand quietly at her side. Kale, the human diplomat who had recently joined the Valorian royal family through marriage, observed the room with careful attention. Unlike most Valorians, he was short, broad-shouldered, and unassuming in appearance. His dark hair fell lightly over his forehead, and his eyes, sharp and calculating, missed nothing. While Leora laughed and joked, Kale's calm expression betrayed none of the thoughts racing through his mind. "Kyle," Leora said, her voice teasing and melodic, "you look like you're waiting for someone to fetch you a tray of tea. Do you even know how to enjoy a banquet?" She laughed lightly, drawing the attention of several dignitaries. "Perhaps our human ways are too complicated for you." Kyle said nothing. He only inclined his head slightly and continued to scan the room. Every detail mattered to him. The placement of the guards, the movement of the servers, the subtle whispers between nobles who thought themselves unseen. In his quiet, methodical way, he was gathering information. The banquet continued, and the air grew tense without anyone noticing. Some of the older Valorian nobles exchanged glances that Kale recognized immediately. They were plotting something, their movements deliberate yet subtle. Humans were often underestimated because of appearances, and Kale had learned to use that underestimation to his advantage. He had been trained for moments like this, quiet, tense, and full of unseen danger. Princess Leora, unaware of the undercurrent of threat, continued her teasing. "Do you intend to stay quiet the entire evening, my dear husband? Perhaps I should fetch you a book to keep your attention while the rest of us converse." She laughed again, her amusement genuine, though a hint of arrogance lingered in her tone. Kale's lips pressed into a thin line, but he made no response. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly, adjusting his position near the edge of the banquet floor. From this vantage point, he could observe the entrances, the exits, and the hidden corridors that led to the palace's inner chambers. Every detail mattered. The moment he had been waiting for arrived suddenly, like a shadow falling over the brilliance of the room. A servant moved strangely, carrying a tray of drinks that seemed almost too heavy for them. Another figure, a noble Kale had not seen before, brushed past the crowd, their movements deliberately clumsy. Something was wrong. Kale's hand brushed against the hilt of his blade, hidden beneath his cloak. The weapon was lightweight but sharp, a piece of human engineering that combined balance, strength, and precision. To the Valorians, it looked like a simple ceremonial sword, but in Kale's hands it was lethal. Without a word, Kale moved. His steps were quiet, deliberate. He had trained for moments like this, when silence and observation were as powerful as any weapon. The first assassin struck, a tall figure with claws that glinted under the crystal lights. But Kyle was ready. In one swift motion, he drew his blade and intercepted the attack. The movement was fluid, almost artistic, and it sent the attacker staggering backward. Gasps filled the hall. Nobles froze, unsure whether to flee or intervene. Princess Leora's laughter vanished, replaced by shock and fear. She had mocked her husband, dismissed him as quiet and timid, and now she saw the truth. Kale was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Another attacker emerged, attempting to strike from the balcony above. Kale pivoted, blocking the attack with a calculated sweep of his blade, the weapon ringing softly against the alien metal. He moved with precision, each step and strike carefully measured. His calmness, which Leora had found amusing, became terrifyingly effective. "Kyle," Leora called, but her voice trembled slightly. "Be careful!" He shot her a glance, brief but reassuring. "Stay behind me," he said quietly, the calm authority in his voice commanding her attention without raising it above the chaos. The conspirators continued their assault, but Kale's human ingenuity gave him the upper hand. While Valorian combat relied on predictable forms and rituals, Kale's movements were unpredictable, adaptive, and efficient. He used the environment, ducking behind pillars, sliding along the polished floor, and striking with precision. Within moments, he had disarmed several attackers and forced the others to retreat. Princess Leora could only watch in awe as her quiet husband became a whirlwind of calculated action. She had thought herself clever, quick and unafraid, but she had underestimated Kyle entirely. His silence had been a mask, concealing a depth of skill, strategy, and courage that few could match. When the last of the immediate threat had been neutralized, Kale sheathed his blade and turned to Leora. The hall was in disarray, overturned chairs and broken crystals scattered across the floor. Guards moved quickly to secure the remaining conspirators, but Kale's presence alone had prevented greater bloodshed. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly, approaching her. "No, She stopped, uncertain how to respond. Her usual wit had vanished, replaced by a dawning respect and something deeper. A realization that the quiet human beside her was far more than he appeared. Kale helped her steady herself. "The palace is secure," he said. "For now, but we must remain vigilant." Leora nodded, still absorbing the events. She had mocked him, dismissed his quiet demeanor, and now she understood the danger of underestimating someone like him. He had acted decisively, calmly, and with skill that few Valorians could comprehend. The rest of the nobles, once smug and amused, now looked at Kale with awe and, in some cases, fear. He had shown them what humanity could do, resourceful, adaptable, and fearless in the face of danger. Leora's teasing had seemed harmless moments before, but now she realized the true strength of her husband. As the banquet hall quieted and the guards restored order, Kale remained alert. His eyes scanned the room, noting exits, potential threats, and the subtle signs of those who might still harbor ill intentions. Princess Leora walked beside him, no longer mocking but quietly observing him. You were incredible," she said finally, her voice low. I didn't know you had such skill." Kyle only smiled faintly, the expression brief but sincere. "I told you I observed first. I act second." The night ended with the palace secured and the conspirators captured, but the events had left a mark. Leora had seen the power of calm intelligence and human ingenuity, and Kale had proven that courage and skill were not always loud or flamboyant. As they left the banquet hall together, Leora's hand brushed against Kale's. She looked at him differently now, not as the quiet, timid husband she had mocked, but as someone capable, brave, and extraordinary. Humanity, she realized, had its own kind of strength, quiet, precise, and unstoppable when unleashed, and Kale, the silent human, had only just begun to reveal it. If you want, I can write part 2 next, keeping the same style, with around 2,000 words worth of story. The palace had settled into an uneasy calm. Guards patrolled the corridors more diligently than ever, and whispers of the assassination attempt rippled through the noble ranks. Kyle walked beside Princess Leora, his eyes scanning every hallway, every corner. The banquet had been only the beginning. He knew the threat was deeper, more organized, and possibly closer than anyone imagined. Leora walked silently beside him, still absorbing the events of the night. Her usual playful energy had been tempered by shock and awe. She had mocked Kale so freely, believing him quiet and unremarkable. But now she realized how wrong she had been. Her eyes followed him as he moved through the palace, alert to every sound and motion. There was a strange power in his silence, a steady confidence that demanded respect without a single boast. "The nobles. They won't forget tonight," Leora said quietly, breaking the silence. "Some will admire you, but others, they may resent you." Kyle nodded. "Resentment can be dangerous. Respect can protect you, but vigilance is necessary." His words were calm, precise, like every action he took. "We must find the source of this conspiracy. If we stop only the attackers, more will come." The palace was vast, with corridors that twisted like the roots of a tree, and rooms hidden behind doors only high-ranking officials could open. Kale led Leora to a private chamber in the royal wing where sensitive information was stored. The Valorians relied heavily on advanced technology, but their systems were predictable. Kale quickly assessed the room, analyzing security nodes, energy patterns, and data conduits. Leora watched him work, fascinated. She had always believed that intelligence and cunning were purely Valorian traits. Now she understood that human minds had a different kind of brilliance, resourceful, flexible, and capable of adapting in ways her people rarely considered. Kale tapped into the palace network cautiously. The assassins had used sophisticated devices to bypass the main security systems, but the human mind excelled at thinking beyond the expected. Kale traced the signals, following the faint digital footprints left behind. Each trace led him closer to the conspirators, revealing not only their plan but also their ultimate goal: to seize control of the throne using both stealth and alien technology to manipulate the palace defenses. "They're organized," Kyle said, his voice low. "They've been planning for months, maybe longer. This attack was just a test, a way to see if the palace would fall easily." Leora frowned, her mind racing. "And if we don't stop them?" Kyle's eyes met hers. "If we don't stop them, the Valorian Empire could collapse from within. That's why we act carefully, decisively, and together." Together. Leora repeated the word in her mind. Until tonight, she had not thought of her husband as an equal in power or strategy. Now she understood that he was not just her partner, but a force capable of saving her people. The investigation led them to a hidden chamber deep beneath the palace, accessible only through a labyrinth of maintenance tunnels. The walls glowed faintly with bioluminescent moss, and the air smelled damp and metallic. Kyle moved silently, every step deliberate, scanning for traps or signs of ambush. Leora followed closely, trusting him more than anyone else in the palace. Inside the chamber, they discovered a network of devices emitting a faint, dangerous hum. The conspirators had created machines to override palace security and manipulate energy fields, giving them access to restricted areas at will. Kale knelt beside the nearest device, examining its mechanisms. Valorian engineers would have been puzzled by the human approach, which combined logic, intuition, and creativity. Within moments, he found the weak point and disabled the device. A soft spark flashed and the hum ceased. Leora watched in amazement. You just stopped their technology. How did you know where to begin?" Kale looked up, expression calm. "Patterns are predictable. Predictability is weakness. I only needed to see the sequence, then act." One by one, Kale disabled the devices, neutralizing the conspirators' advantage. Each success was a lesson for Leora. Humans relied not on overwhelming power or flashy techniques, but on observation, adaptability, and precision. She realized her playful mockery had been naive. The quiet human beside her was extraordinary. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the tunnels. Kale's hand moved instinctively to his blade, and he signaled Leora to stay back. Two of the conspirators emerged, armed and dangerous, their expressions twisted with anger and surprise. They had assumed the humans would be no threat, that they were predictable and easily intimidated. They were wrong. Kale moved first. His strike was swift and decisive, disabling the first conspirator before the second could react. The second tried to attack, but Kale anticipated the move, countering with a fluid motion that left the attacker stunned on the ground. Leora, despite her initial shock, felt a surge of pride and admiration. She had seen bravery before, but never like this. Calm, methodical, and fearless in the face of chaos. After the fight, Kale approached the remaining conspirators with a quiet authority that demanded obedience. "You will leave this palace, and you will never attempt to harm the royal family again," he said. The Valorians, unused to human directness, hesitated, then complied. Kale's presence alone had altered the balance of power in the room. Returning to the royal chambers, Kale and Leora found the palace in partial disarray. Guards were reorganizing, nobles whispered in awe, and the sense of threat had not fully dissipated. Yet, there was a new respect in the eyes of those who had witnessed Kale's actions. He had shown them that courage and intelligence could overcome strength and tradition, that humanity had its own kind of power. Leora approached Kale, her expression softening. I was wrong," she admitted quietly. "I underestimated you." Kyle smiled faintly. "You are not the only one who has learned tonight. The palace has learned as well. Respect must be earned, not assumed." The next days were filled with careful planning. Kyle worked alongside Leora to strengthen palace defenses, combining human strategy with Valorian technology. They trained the guards, adjusted security protocols, and developed contingencies for every possible threat. Leora observed and learned, realizing that her husband's quiet demeanor had been a shield, hiding skills that could protect an entire empire. In private moments, their partnership deepened. Leora no longer teased Kale for his silence. Instead, she engaged him in discussions about tactics, strategy, and the subtle ways humans perceived the world differently from Valorians. She found his insight refreshing, his calm mind a stabilizing force in her life. The playful mockery of the past was replaced with genuine admiration, respect, and the beginnings of trust that transcended species. One evening, after the palace had quieted, Leora and Kyle stood on a balcony overlooking the alien city below. The glowing towers reflected in the night sky, and the hum of activity reminded them that life continued, even after danger had passed. "You saved more than the palace," Leora said softly. "You saved me, too. I didn't realize how much strength there could be in silence." Kyle looked at her, his calm eyes meeting hers. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and deliberate. That is how we survive. That is how we protect what matters. She smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and affection. I think I understand you better now. Perhaps I even admire you more than I ever thought I could." Kyle's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "And I admire you, Princess. For your courage, your intelligence, and your willingness to trust." The night stretched on, a quiet moment of peace after the storm. The Valorian Empire had faced danger, and the humans, through calm intelligence, courage, and skill, had proven their worth. Kyle's actions had shown that humanity's greatest strength lay not in loud displays but in thought, observation, and decisive action. In the days that followed, the conspirators were captured, palace defenses were stronger than ever, and Kale and Leora became a team to be reckoned with. Together, they represented a new era for the Valorian Empire, one where human ingenuity and alien tradition combined to create strength that was both unexpected and unstoppable. And through it all, the quiet human who had once been mocked stood tall, his blade at his side, ready to protect the empire and the princess who had finally come to see him as the hero he truly was.